Welcome to Betrayal Narratives. In today's video, we step into a story about loyalty, sacrifice, and a heartbreak that spans more than 2 decades. Every word you're about to hear comes from a man who raised his daughter alone, gave her everything, and watched the one person he loved more than anything slowly drift toward a life that didn't include him. This is his story. For 22 years, I was both father and mother to my daughter, Sienna. I taught her how to walk, how to swim, how to tie her shoes, how to drive, how to face the world with kindness even when life wasn't fair. Her mother left when she was barely 1 year old, too young to hold memories, but old enough to cry every night for a face that never returned. People say time softens everything. But when a house built for two becomes a home for one parent and one child, every crack in the foundation stays visible forever. Still, I did everything I could. When Sienna scraped her knees, when she came home crying because a classmate called her names, when she was too small to understand why other kids had two parents showing up to school plays, and she only had me, those were the years that shaped me more than anything else ever would. A single sheet of paper. No apology. No explanation beyond a few sharp lines about needing a future that aligned with her potential. Sienna lay in her crib, red-eyed and restless, her little fists clenched as if she sensed something important had gone missing. That night, and many nights afterward, she cried until her voice broke. His son, Miles, had been born just 6 months before Sienna. And Marcus knew the ropes in ways I didn't. That first week, he took me to Target, pushing a cart full of formula and diapers as if we'd just stepped into a new chapter neither of us had prepared for. "Lucas," he said, loading the cart with bottles, burp cloths, and baby wipes. Paige left because she didn't want responsibilities. People like that don't come back. Don't set yourself up for false hope. He was right. Paige didn't return, not in the way a mother should. Every few months she'd call. 5 minutes, maybe 6. Sometimes she'd ask Sienna about school. Sometimes she'd vaguely promise a visit she never made. But what she always did was send gifts, expensive ones, dolls that cost more than my weekly groceries. Electronics I had no idea how to set up. Designer kids' clothes from brands I'd never heard of. At first I thought it was guilt. Then I realized it was strategy. She wanted to maintain a presence without doing the work. And even though I didn't like the tactic, I told myself that at least Sienna didn't feel completely abandoned. Raising her alone taught me more about myself than any job ever did. I learned how to braid her even, though the first few attempts looked like twisted rope. I learned how to make a decent ponytail. I learned the names of all her stuffed animals because she insisted they each had their own bedtime routine. I learned how to budget down to the last dollar so she could attend a decent school and participate in activities. I took on extra shifts, lived frugally, and poured every bit of energy into making sure Sienna had a happy, stable childhood. She was my world, and for years I was hers. We were a team. She'd help me in the kitchen, pretending to be a famous chef, and I'd sit through hours of her animated movie marathons. We built a life, brick by brick, on the empty foundation Paige had left behind. As Sienna grew older, her mother's presence evolved from sporadic phone calls to something more tangible. Paige began sending plane tickets for weekend visits to her lavish home. At first, Sienna would return with stories of swimming pools and fancy dinners. But she always seemed relieved to be back in our small, quiet house. She'd hug me tight at the airport and say, "I missed you, Dad." Those words were my fuel. They meant I was doing something right. But by the time she was a teenager, things started to shift. The expensive gifts turned into experiences, shopping sprees in big cities, concerts with front row seats, vacations to exotic places. Paige was offering a lifestyle I couldn't compete with, and slowly, the glitter began to stick. Sienna would come home quieter, a little more distant. The stories she told were less about the fun she had and more about the things she now wanted. When Sienna was 18, she received a graduation gift from Paige, a brand new car. It was a sleek, expensive model that made my well-maintained 10-year-old sedan look like a relic. I had saved for years to buy her a reliable used car, something safe and practical. I had a small savings account specifically for it. When Paige's gift arrived on a flatbed truck, it felt like a slap in the face. Sienna was ecstatic, of course. She spent the afternoon driving around with her friends, showing it off. That evening, I tried to talk to her about the car I had planned to get her. "It's okay, Dad," she said, not unkindly, but with a dismissive wave of her hand. "This one is way better. You can just use that money for something else." She didn't understand that the money was never the point. The point was the love, the thought, the sacrifice behind it. That was the first time I felt a real crack in our foundation. It was the first time I realized I was in a competition I had already lost. The summer after graduation, Sienna spent a month with Paige. She came back a different person. Her wardrobe was full of designer clothes, her speech peppered with brand names, and her future plans had completely changed. Before, she had talked about attending the local state university to study social work. Now, she was talking about business schools, about entrepreneurship, about living in a big city. Paige had planted a seed, and it was growing fast. My brother Marcus noticed it too. "She's got her mother's eyes now, Lucas," he told me one evening. "Not the color, the ambition. Be careful." I didn't want to believe him. This was my Sienna, the little girl who used to fall asleep on my chest, the teenager who told me everything. But she was slipping away, and I felt powerless to stop it. The final blow came when Sienna announced she was moving in with Paige to attend a private university near her mother's home. Paige had offered to pay her full tuition and living expenses. There was no way I could match that. I had a college fund for her, one I'd been contributing to since she was born. But it was modest, meant for a state school. It couldn't even cover a single semester at the place Paige had chosen. I sat her down at our kitchen table, the same one where Paige's goodbye note had once rested. I tried to explain that this wasn't just about money. It was about values, about staying true to who she was. "Who I am, Dad?" she asked, her voice sharper than I'd ever heard it. "I'm a girl who wants a future. Mom is offering me a future." "What are you offering me? A life of scraping by, just like you." Her words hit me like a physical blow. 22 years of sacrifice, of unconditional love, of putting her first, all reduced to scraping by. In that moment, I saw Paige in her face so clearly it was terrifying. The same dismissal, the same cold ambition, the same belief that love and loyalty could be traded for a better offer. She packed her bags the following week. It was a surreal replay of 2 decades earlier. Only this time, the person leaving was the one I had built my entire world around. She didn't leave a note. She said goodbye at the door, a quick, awkward hug. "I'll call you," she promised, a promise that felt as empty as her mother's. I stood on the porch and watched her drive away in the car her mother had bought her, until it was just a small speck on the horizon. The silence that filled the house this time was different. Wasn't just empty, it was hollow, was the sound of a story ending. Thanks for tuning in to our story today. If you have ever felt the sting of betrayal from someone you love, know that you are not alone. If you're struggling, talking to a trusted friend, family member, or a mental health professional can make a world of difference. Your story matters, and so does your healing. "Dad," she began, "I'm moving in with Mom and Samuel." I didn't understand. Not at first. I asked why. And she answered with a list that cut deeper with every word. "Because they have a pool. Because they have space. 'Cause I can invite friends over without them feeling embarrassed by where I live. That last sentence wasn't a knife fit, was the twist after the knife. I had spent decades building a life for her, sacrificing personal dreams, forgetting weekends, skipping nights out, stretching every dollar. And to her, all of it had become something to be ashamed of. She moved out within a week. The house felt heavier than it had in years. The silence changed again this time, not from abandonment, but from the echo of words spoken without understanding their impact. A year later, Sienna met Adrienne at one of Samuel's company events. They got engaged quickly, and when the wedding invitation arrived in the mail, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, I was still part of her life. I bought a new navy blue suit, dress shoes, a matching tie. I even put pearl earrings on layaway so I could give her something meaningful. Something that would last longer than disagreements or misunderstandings. Something she could wear for decades and remember her father's unwavering love. Miles went with me to choose the earrings. Kay Marcus congratulated me. Even Mr. Robert commented on how happy I looked carrying the shopping bags. For the first time in a long time, hope found a place inside me again. But what I didn't know was that the wedding invitation wasn't a promise of inclusion. It was a courtesy, cold, impersonal, and without intention. 2 weeks before the wedding, Sienna called me. Her voice was tight, rushed, as if she was reading from a script. "Dad, about the wedding? Yes, sweetheart. I need you to not come." I didn't understand. "What do you mean? Samuel is giving me away. And Adrienne's family expects things to be done a certain way. They're covering a lot of the costs, and they think it would be better if things stayed simple. With one father figure. One father figure. Not the man who raised her. Not the man who fed her, clothed her, taught her, held her when she cried. Not the man who gave up everything for her. No, Samuel. A man who stepped into the picture once the hard work had already been done. I worked extra hours at the bank, picked up weekend teaching gigs at the community college, sold life insurance in the afternoons. Sometimes I barely slept, but I made it work because Sienna deserved the best I could give. When she hugged me before school each morning, when she scanned the parking lot looking for me at pickup time, when she asked me to read her bedtime stories until she drifted felt rich in ways Paige would never understand. Money can fill a house, but it can't fill the kind of silence that comes from choosing luxury over love. Marcus warned me early on. He said I spoiled Sienna too much. That I gave her everything she asked for because I felt guilty for what she'd been denied. Maybe he was right. But I didn't regret it. I wanted her to feel special, even if the world made her feel incomplete at times. Miles, on the other hand, was the opposite of Sienna.com. Polite, thoughtful. Every time he came over, he'd offer to help with groceries or dinner. He grew into the kind of young man any parent would be proud of, but he never lorded it over Sienna. He treated her like the cousin she was, impatient sometimes, but always kind. As Sienna grew older, the differences between her life and the luxurious lifestyle her mother flaunted became harder for her to ignore. She'd come home frustrated because her friends lived in modern houses with pools, while ours was an aging 3-bedroom fixer-upper. She'd complain about our truck, the older model that coughed every morning before deciding to start. She'd compare my long work hours to Samuel's flexible schedule. Even the clothes Paige bought her became a wedge symbols of the life she wished she had full-time. Neighbors noticed too. Mr. Robert, the retired gentleman next door, often said Sienna seemed unhappy no matter what I did. Mary, who ran the corner deli, observed how Sienna rarely said thank you when I bought her special treats. But I kept defending her. Teens go through phases. Kids get influenced easily. I clung to excuses because letting go of them meant facing a truth I didn't want to see. Years passed, and despite the subtle cracks, Sienna grew into a smart, determined young woman. She went to college for business administration, her choice, though I suspect her mother's world influenced her more than she admitted. I paid for every semester, sometimes working late into the night to ensure tuition was handled. I never told her how deep in debt I went because I didn't want her to feel guilty. College changed her. Little by little, I noticed her messages became shorter. Her visits home became rare. Her presence in the house felt more like short layovers between flights. And Paige began appearing more often, whisking her to expensive lunches, gifting her handbags that cost more than my monthly mortgage, and telling her stories about the life she could have if she stayed close. Then came the day Sienna turned 23. She walked into the living room, stood near the doorway as if she didn't plan to sit, and delivered the kind of blow that can silence a man. I tried to reason with her, tried to tell her how much it meant to me, that I had been looking forward to walking her down the aisle since she was a toddler dragging her stuffed bear behind her. But she cut me off. "Dad, I also changed my last name." I didn't breathe. Not immediately. "What?" "I changed it to Cross. Months ago. I just didn't want you to be upset. But I didn't want to carry a name that didn't fit my life anymore. Didn't fit my life anymore." Those words woke me up many nights afterward. They were simple words, said in a moment of immaturity, but they carved a scar so deep that even now I feel its edges. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I didn't guilt her. I simply said, "If that's what you've decided, then I hope it brings you happiness." But inside, something shut down. For 22 years, I had been her constant, her protector, her foundation. And with a few sentences, she cut the rope connecting us. I didn't go to the wedding. I didn't send the earrings. Didn't reach out afterward. For months, she didn't contact me either. Not a message. Not a call. Not a holiday greeting. Nothing. I focused on rebuilding my life, brick by brick, piece by piece. I spent more time with Marcus and Miles. I fixed up the house. I slept without the lingering ache of waiting for footsteps that wouldn't come. One afternoon, Miles showed up with 2 tickets to a local jazz event. "Come on, Uncle," he said. "You need a night out. I'm not letting you say no." For the first time in years, I felt like myself again. The music, the people, the sense of belonging, simple things I had forgotten, could feel good. I earned a promotion at work, started taking walks in the evening, tried new hobbies, joined a weekend cooking class. The world didn't become perfect, but it became livable. Then, a year and a half after the wedding, Sienna reached out. Not with an apology, not with introspection. It's just a message. "Dad, can we talk?" We met at a cafe. She arrived looking different, older, more serious, less polished than before. She sat down and stared at her cup for a long time. "I made mistakes," she finally said. "I thought life would be different, better, easier. But I didn't understand what I was choosing. I didn't say anything," she continued. "Samuel wants Adrienne to join the family business. They're traveling a lot. I feel like a guest, like an accessory. I thought I was gaining a family, but I didn't realize what I was losing." Her voice cracked. "I miss you, Dad." I wanted to hug her. I wanted to forgive everything. I wanted to go back in time and erase all the wounds. But life isn't a story that resets. I reached across the table and held her hand gently. "I'll always care about you," I said. "That will never change. But things won't go back to how they were. Not right away. You made choices, and I respect them. But healing takes time." She nodded. Tears slipped down her cheeks. She wasn't angry. She wasn't defensive. She simply understood. And that was enough. We didn't rebuild overnight. Some relationships shatter so thoroughly that they can only be rearranged into something new, not restored to their original shape. Today, Sienna and I are better, not perfect, not as close as before, but we communicate. We meet for dinner occasionally. She calls on my birthday. Call on hers. The connection is fragile, but present. Sometimes life doesn't give you a fairy tale ending. Sometimes the best you get is a quiet resolution, one that doesn't erase the pain but allows you to walk forward without its weight. I didn't get the daughter I dreamed I would have in adulthood. She didn't get the father she fully appreciated until later. But we found something in between. And in life, sometimes in between is enough to start again,